and welcome back to a brand new season of Soundcheck. My name is Enthusiasm. I've caught off guard by enthusiasm. That's how terrible this world is. What is that exactly? I have not heard enthusiasm in a long time. But if there's any time to be enthusiastic, it's when Soundcheck gets back on the air. And as always, it's hosted by me, Andrew Mullen, and my absolutely wonderful, spectacular, magnificent, slightly hairy co-host,
Michael Livingston.
Here we go.
You had me and then you lost me. But
I didn't know how else to say it, but I'm not saying it as a bad thing, Michael. You have a wonderful beard. That's what I was referring to.
Thanks, I'm really trying, and now people can see it because we are on video.
Yes, we are. We are. You have to see my horrible face. I apologize for that, but hopefully we can march through it. But there is a third individual on this call as well. Our ever wonderful, our ever just keeping this thing rolling somehow. We appreciate him so much. He is
Ben Ackley.
Yay, a podcast. I don't know what this intro is, but I think it went well. But yes, Soundcheck, we are back. We are the rock and roll and alternative music podcast here at Central Michigan Life. And we've been away for a little while. You know, summer was around. There's this ever-present thing happening in the world. You can probably take a guess what that is. But yeah, we are coming back. Still doing things over Zoom. We want to make sure we are taking some safety precautions here. Maybe one day we'll be back in a studio if we can figure out how to record video there, and make sure everyone is safe and not sick. That would be nice. But yeah, I think this is going to be a really fun season. We've got some really fun ideas, planned, going forward this semester. But yeah, first of all, I want to stop talking and hear from my two good friends here. What have you guys been up to this summer?
This summer, we all were kind of working a little bit, but we all had kind of different things going on. I was working for the Midland Daily News and WCMU Public Radio, which was a lot of fun. I mean, I recorded not only the world crisis we're in, but also the crisis Midland faced with the floods and everything. And that was, I definitely grew as a journalist being there. And I mean, that was a life-changing experience, but somehow I found time to discover some awesome new music, which we'll get to. But yeah, that was pretty much my summer, is just like 9-to-5 job, which, I didn't think I could get through, but it was waking up, doing stories, putting them out every day. And now we're finally back at CM Life. And I mean, I have such a bigger appreciation for this place now, because it's like, it is an official news organization, but like we're not really out there like the Midland Daily is, like a story a day kind of thing. So yeah, that's what I did.
Yes. My summer was a lot less work oriented. I would say a lot less. My big thing, I did a little bit here at CM Life. I was working on some podcasts. We'd have a podcast come up here, a video come up there, and I'd help out. But for the most part, my summer centered around a 3-week long road trip. We traveled, I don't have the full totals yet, but it was around 7,000 miles. We got from here to Yosemite in California and back. And we were able to do it safely, surprisingly. And we had to cut some legs off of it because of the virus in Texas being so bad and stuff like that. But it was a successful summer nonetheless, and a very cool trip that I had been waiting a long time to do. And a lot of the songs, I think all of the songs I'm going to play you today had a little factor in that the soundtrack for that trip.
Excellent. Wow. I'll be looking forward to hearing those anecdotes. And then as for me, I was working in Ann Arbor at the Ann Arbor News for M Live. If you don't know, if you are somehow tuning outside of Michigan, that is I think it's the parent company's Events Local, but it's a kind of a group. East of Michigan, M Live is a group of like papers across the state. I'm not going to list all the cities that they're in, but they're in quite a few of them. And Ann Arbor is one of them. And that's where I worked. Well, mostly from home. I unfortunately had to work home from Brighton, reporting for Ann Arbor, which is weird and not really how I wanted to do it. But it's the world we're living in right now. And yeah, I just kind of helped pick up the slack for them. Wrote a lot of like kind of talked to a lot of business owners, talking about how much they're struggling. Watch, in some cases, not like adapting pretty well to it, pretty well to the pandemic. But and yeah, just yeah, it was an interesting time. I hadn't really done journalism like that before, and it's how we're still doing it now, kind of, doing things remotely. But yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it just sucks, kind of.
Yeah.
It really is no other way of saying it. But let's not down ourselves here.
Well,
You're talking about journalism.
I think we should talk about it more, because I felt so bad for you throughout this summer, because you're in Ann Arbor, like where I catch a lot of shows, and there was no shows to go to.
No shows to go to. No, really. There's hardly, probably, there was some, like when they opened up the patio space downtown, when you went there, and because eventually I know a lot of towns and cities are doing this, where they're like allowing some streets open to patio spaces where like restaurants can like extend and like put tables out so they can serve people outside, social distance. And then also just having like, cornhole there or whatnot, stuff like that. And, and honestly, as a side note, that's honestly, I hope something that at least on local levels, that's what towns and cities will do. Maybe at least on weekends or something, realize, hey, we don't need roads everywhere. Like they're not necessarily a lot of places. They won't really be too much of a burden. And, we can just, have good patio spaces instead. And that's a good way to bring communities together. And honestly, even like unclog, traffic congestion, because more people are walking and biking, but that's a whole nother discussion. So, but just the point is, yeah, there were some fun things a few times I did manage to get down there. There were some fun things, but yeah, like not a lot was happening, in Ann Arbor, like you would expect if you know anything about it. It's it's a busy, town with with a big university there and whatnot. And so it was a bit of a bummer, but again, let's not dwell on bummer with the music, with the journalism industry. And let's talk about the bummers of the music industry, because before we get into our main topic, which we'll introduce in a second, I think you three of us wanted to have a short discussion about what we think the state of the music business is right now. And I actually kind of want Ben to start us off with that, because he does the music making. He puts the music online, so he's kind of has a foot in that. So I'm kind of curious what you have to say about that, Ben.
Right. Well, that I wouldn't say I have a huge role in the music industry, but
I didn't say huge. I said you had a foot.
But I've dipped my toe into it before. I've known what it's like to make fractions of pennies off of songs on Spotify and stuff like that. And yeah, if there's obviously every industry is hurting from this right now, but considering that we're in the age of streaming, your favorite bands are probably doing pretty poorly right now, because they make their money off of concert appearances, and specifically selling merch at those concert appearances. Now that's not happening. So bands are losing a lot of money. I'm assuming, a lot of the smaller bands we like, these people work regular jobs too, but they might be having to pick up hours there, focus even less on the music than they were already able to. So it's kind of dire straits that we can't have concerts anymore, because that was the huge mainstream of revenue for bands, especially these smaller bands.
I can back that up by just saying, like, you can, it's right to feel like, why can't I go to a show? It was festival season. We missed out on, all of these great bands performing, and, what am I going to do? But you should be thinking about the people that were supposed to be on stage. I mean, go back and listen to our Hidden in the Mitten episode, the online fines and stuff. Those bands that we talk about that don't get a lot of attention from the big record labels, or they don't have like a big historical significance, the ones that are up and coming.
Those not a big following in general.
Yeah, those artists are in jeopardy. Their art is in jeopardy. The ability to make a living off of it is in jeopardy because of this virus. And getting rid of live performances and that face-to-face interaction with your favorite band up on stage, that is a whole part of the umbrella of music that is missing, and here's the rain falling through, right? And I hope, for the sake of anybody who makes and records music, that this is going to be changed as soon as possible. I mean, obviously that depends on us, how strong our government is, et cetera, et cetera. But like, yeah, this is something that's facing us as a podcast, the performers, and you as a listener.
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone should upset it yet, but I think I need to point out the obvious here. Again, I think Ben kind of alluded to it, thus being in the age of streaming. Most artists, like pretty much every artist makes most of the money through touring, through playing shows, playing gigs, not through the music really making anymore. I mean, sure, vinyl sales are back up, although I don't know how they've been lately. They're not making money from the music really anymore, except when they play it live. I mean, that's just been the general rule. That's been the general understanding for the past 10 years, or however many, pretty much since iTunes came around and piracy became a thing. It's like forget having having streaming or online digital purchases. Yeah, piracy is still a thing, and we can debate the merits of that, like how ethical that is all day long. The point is, it's still there. People are still going to do it. And yeah, without artists being able to play shows, I mean, I don't have exact figures in front of me, but it can't be good. There's no way it can be good. I know like Bandcamp, for instance, they've been trying to cut back on artist fees and trying to like encourage people to purchase music through their site. Some places are trying to do things like that, but I don't know how much you can really catch all. I'd be really interested to see if I don't know if anyone would be able to calculate like how much money artists lost during this time. How many bands broke up because of this, because they can't because they can't tour, and it's like just how those relationships fall apart, or they can't make money. It's like, well, and I have to make money somehow. This music thing isn't going to cut it now. Yeah. And would they want to pick it back up after this whole thing ends? I don't know. So it's a really sad state of affairs. I don't know if virtual concerts, there's a lot of things virtually around us, I think, that will catch on after this pandemic ends. Concerts, I'm not too sure about. Like, I don't know how much.
I to go to a couple. It's not the same, man.
It just isn't, and I don't know if I want to spend $30 or however, or even just tuning in, even just for free, just tuning in. It's like, okay, I'm just like I'm watching like a festival clip on YouTube, except there's no people there. So I don't know. Again, like I said, it's a sad state of affairs, and I don't really know what solution there is. It's just the music industry is kind of in a weird place because of that, and it's just suffering because of it.
Yeah. Just to avoid being preachy or anything, if you were planning on starting that record collection or that CD collection, or you were like, what should I buy this person's music? Do it. That now is the time to do it. And I don't think we're going to spend every episode kind of addressing this and talking about it, even though we should. Yeah. But that's something you should be thinking about, and it's something you should act on. Now's the chance. Take that unemployment money and go on your favorite record store's website and just order a shit ton, because God knows they need it. All of those artists.
The bigger artists will be fine. It's obviously the smaller artists. It's if you are going to think about starting a physical collection, go there. But even then, people don't have as much disposable income nowadays. I don't know how much. Even if people do want to support them, I don't know if they have the capacity to do so now. And I think just a lot of things just keep piling up on that.
And yeah, I mean, just to conclude the conversation, act on it. Do your part as a music listener. You have an extra job now to go and support those artists that you've come to love and respect. Those smaller ones, like Andrew was saying. Mick Jagger will be fine, but that small band you saw in a house or a local venue, they need you. So go help them out.
Excellent. Michael's diatribe was so good. Ben is speechless. So let's move on to the meat of this episode. You might be able to guess from the title of this episode, whatever it's going to be. We're going to start off kind of, I don't want to say light, but kind of simple. we're going to talk about the music we discovered this summer, particularly over, or maybe during quarantine, maybe more specifically, I don't know, which basically the same thing at this point. All of summer was in quarantine. So we're obviously, I mean, even between work and whatnot, it sounds like we all had some time to discover new music. Obviously, being stuck at home, yeah, probably more time to peruse, Spotify or online or YouTube or whatever, however you discover music, and just kind of get into some new stuff. So not every artist I think we're talking, actually no, definitely not every artist we're talking about are necessarily small. In fact, I see one of Michael's is pretty well known. And that's not really the point to particularly talk about smaller name artists, I don't think. I think we just want to talk about stuff that we personally kind of discover the summer, and we kind of want to just talk about it and share with each other. And then, of course, share with all you, the listeners at home, or watch us at home if you're on YouTube. Forgot, we're doing video now. This is going to take some getting used to.
Yeah, you pretty much nailed it down. The only thing I would add is not all of these are just artists we've discovered. I know my picks, at least, I got a soundtrack in mind. One of them's just an album. These are just things, just music that we really connected with over the summer. And whether that was inspired by quarantine or not, we'll find out. But I mean, yeah, it's just some great picks that you should check out. And just some cool stuff we were vibing to over the summer.
Yeah.
So let's do some vibing.
All right.
I regret saying that immediately. Ben. No. Michael, you're going to start us off now. Talk about your first pick for us.
So this first album I was recommended just by one of the various music pages I follow on social media, Instagram, whatever. I recognized the cover. It's easily recognizable. You got this small little alien dude opening up a door, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. There's not a lot of background to this that I can really give you. It's the debut album of a Swedish musician named Sputnik, but under the alias Weatherday. So that's what you're going to want to search on Spotify. It dropped out of nowhere last year in April. I had first heard this. I had just finished moving into my new apartment, setting up furniture, hanging stuff up. I was tired. I laid on my bed. I put on these studio headphones that I acquired from my summer internship, and I just kind of launched into this thing. And you're going to see what I mean here when Ben shows you the first track. It's the title track, and it's called Come In.
Come in.
Come on.
I was awkwardly bobbing my head up and down because I wasn't sure if this part was going to be on video or not. So I'm like, I have to do something.
Yeah. I mean, I would argue that is one of the best starts to an album I've heard in a long time. I mean, and it's able to keep up that emotion, as you keep going through the album, and it breaks down at the 2:30 mark. You got songs that follow it up, that kind of Mio Min Mio is the next track, kind of trudges along. You get introduced some math rock elements later on. There's some beautiful piano ballads, some strings on it. I mean, this album has everything I want, really. It breaks genre barriers, intrigues you with the lyrical content, shatters you with the instrumentals. It excites you, it depresses you. I can see some fair criticism coming in that I think you guys will probably bring up in the production. Because, the production is shoddy, but I honestly cannot listen to it or imagine it sounding any other way. I would recommend anybody check this out. You're going to see my picks kind of descend into least accessible to most accessible. But I'd say if you're a fan of just really loud, abrasive, emo noise, or some, even if you're a fan of like the early Dinosaur Jr. records. I mean, that's what I was getting when I first heard this, with the doubled vocals. Like I can kind of hear that very first Dino record in there, the loud guitars, and then, you know, you get these beautiful instrumentals that you wouldn't expect in there too. So definitely give this album a listen, but I want to know what you guys think, because this one I think came out of nowhere. I showed it to Andrew earlier in the summer when we met up, but
right.
yeah, in the car ride back from Ann Arbor. So, I mean, now that you guys have given it a full listen, what do you think?
I guess I'll go first since Michael dropped my name there. No, this was pretty interesting. I like this. There's definitely some interesting instrumentation going on. I don't know why. I was getting some. This was reminding me a lot of a band that we've talked in the show before, quite a bit, called Loomer. They're a showgaze band. Yes, it's a showgaze from Brazil. I love them. I think they're great, and I think they also, especially on some of their early work, have a lot of shoddy production. Although I think that's part of their charm. And you know, they're very noisy. You know, have a lot of elements of you know just like early Dino, and like you know just some classic showgaze to them as well. And I was definitely getting some of that vibes. Definitely getting at some of them from too, especially with those really buzzy guitar tone that they gave, which I really liked. As you allude to, Michael, yeah, I did have some issues with the production, and I didn't hear as much with this one. Maybe it was just with other songs I heard. Is particularly the cymbals. The cymbals became a major distraction to me at some point. They were just too loud. They were kind of washing out a lot of the other instruments to me. I'm just like, it was to a point where it was a really sore spot to me because of that. It was just too hard to look over. I would really like a rematch. Like, I know it probably just came out, but I already want like kind of remastering this because I did like what I heard, but you know, those cymbals again kind of got in the way at times. So, but no, I mean, this is a really strong pick. I kind of forgot that you had showed me this before, but now remembering it, yeah, this is some strong stuff, and I'd be interested to see where they would go going forward, if they would kind of, you know, iron out some of the kinks they have.
Yeah. I will go next, as I'm the only person who hasn't talked about it. I listened to this at Michael's place while watching a like atrocious like mid 2000s shark movie.
Yeah.
So that is on in the background. I have my headphones on and I'm listening to this album, and it's just like consistently blowing me away. I called it in my notes a solo project that sounds like a solo project. Like, it really sounds like this Swedish man is doing whatever he wants. Like, you'll be rocking through a song, then it'll just cut off, and now there's a string quartet. And then it'll cut off, and now there's a piano, and then it cuts off, and you're back in the song again. It kind of feels like he does whatever he wants. I didn't really have a problem with the production. I'm definitely like used to really bad production. Just in like, I don't listen to like, I listen to a lot of like home recorded stuff from the 70s where cassette recorders were garbage, and you kind of have to find the diamond in the rough. I could really like find that happening here. I also didn't notice the cymbals, but I might have to go back and listen closer for that. And now that you've told me, maybe it'll bug me. But I thought that this was insane. And a note on that production, I don't know like what the truth to this is, but I was looking around. I was trying to find any information on this at all. It's very difficult, as I'm sure Michael knows. But I was looking at the Bandcamp page for this release. And at the very bottom of the notes, where after the acknowledgments and the thank yous and everything, there's a little thank you that says, "And thanks to the microphone on my earbuds for recording this entire thing," or something like that. And I was like, it's probably not the whole thing, but if all the vocals on this album are coming through a earbud microphone, I'm just going to say it's possible. You know?
Yeah. Wow. No, that would make sense. That would make sense. But I mean, like, here's the thing, and this is gonna be a weird comparison. I know when we had Brent, that's our podcast I did, we did an episode of Black Metal with them, and he talked about how a lot of these guys would just like take their shitty, over the ear, headphones. They would just flip it around and just use the microphone inside. Like they would flip them inside out and use the microphone inside them to like record their vocals. I mean, that definitely has some, that definitely reminds me a lot of that, except there's, less church burning and fascism. But
that way.
But no, that's, I mean, no, if that's true, I actually find this a lot more endearing now because again, I like it when artists are able to work around like limitations and be resourceful and still manage to create something very can't think of the word interesting. I know it's long build up for
You're right.
an uninteresting word, but you know what I mean. I think this is a really enduring band, and again, I really want to see where they go, or he goes. Or there's another vocalist on this album, though, wasn't there?
Yeah, it's probably friends that he brought in. Maybe his girlfriend.
Okay.
I don't know. There is a female voice on it. I don't know who it is.
Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah.
I am interested in keeping the momentum going and going to the next person.
Let's do it.
Oh, okay. My turn. Okay. We're going to go we were talking about an array of emotions, but we're going to go straight to just depressed and sad. That's the most of what you're going to get from this artist. An artist a lot of you might actually at least have heard of, or at least I've heard of at least with another band. We're talking about the artist Nico. If that name is familiar with you, she is a solo. She's from Germany. I think she's started off as a model, I want to say. I could be wrong. But then she went on to do a lot of acting and in music. Most famously, on the music side, working with the Velvet Underground and, singing lead vocals on 3 of the tracks on that debut record. Female Fatale, all the World's Parties. And Ben, can you help me with the third one?
Not without looking at it, I can't.
I think it's I'll Be Your Mirror.
I'll Be Your Mirror, yeah.
Thank you. So, yeah, she's most notable for doing that, but, anyone in the know, she also did she also has a pretty decent array of solo work that she did. Her first solo album was called Chelsea Girl, and I really don't know that one very much. That was one she didn't write. She did a lot of covers on that one.
Right.
She didn't write a lot of the songs.
She didn't write any of the songs on that.
No, I know Lou Reed actually helped her contribute to that, record. But after I think she started hanging out and I think dating Jim Morrison for a little while, he convinced her, hey, you should write your own music, and she did. Starting off with the Marble Index. And then Desert Shore, then The End, which is primarily the records I had you to sample here. So I don't think either one of you were familiar with her work. Either was I until around the start of this whole thing. And I'll be honest, the reason I started listening to her because this quarantine pandemic sucks, and I was not in the brightest spots in my life at the start of this. And I heard okay, she how just dark and atmospheric this was. And it's I need some of that. So I listened to the Marble Index, just all I kind of turned all the lights off in my room. So I just kind of listened to the Marble Index and just kind of let it wash over me. And this is some powerful stuff. She and not necessarily lyrically. Again, she has a thick accent. I don't know what she's saying half the time, but just the way she delivers her vocals and just the way that just the instruments just wash over her. Wash over you. She uses a Wikipedia. Help me.
Harmonium.
Harmonium. Thank you. Yes, that's correct. And that's primarily what she uses in her music, and it's just pretty much that. It's pretty stripped down, pretty bare, but yet still full of just. She has a presence about her. Is the best way I can put it. When a lot of people don't like her way of approaching music, and I kind of can see why. I can see a lot of people listening to this and going, I don't know what's happening right now. What is the point of this? But I think her voice just carries so much here. And just to kind of help display that, I think I want to play you guys a clip of a song from her technically her third solo album, Desert Shore. The song's called Falconer.
summer sail at dawn, unlocking flooded silver cages. And with a silver dinner rise, all the lovely faces, and the lovely silver traces erase my empty pages.
So that's kind of a good kind of overview of what her music sounds like. It's pretty bleak sounding stuff, especially those two records I mentioned. And yeah, there's some great stuff here. Before I continue spouting stuff off about here, I want to hear what you two had to say, because I don't think either one of you were really familiar with their solo work.
I don't know if you had me in mind when you chose this, Andrew, but I mean, this hit the spot for me, definitely. And I think you probably were going to expect that. I mean, when it comes to putting you in this state of not exactly depression, I wouldn't call it that. And I was just talking with someone the other day saying, you know, it's really hard to find some music that kind of just confuses you almost. And that's what I get with Nico sometimes is, you know, I'll listen to it and I'm in a state of confusion, in a state of like, where am I? What am I doing? And it kind of makes you kind of leave your body for a second almost and kind of see the world from a different perspective. And that's what I got with when I listened to the Falconer. I loved Valley of Kings as well. And Facing the Wind was another pick I had written down. But yeah, I mean, this hit right for me, right where it needs to. And yeah, how did you get into this again, Andrew? Because did someone introduce this to you, or did you go from the Velvet Underground to Nico? Like,
I really don't have much of a reason. I know I've heard a lot of people talk about the Marble Index, which is again the first record she pretty much wrote by herself. And I know Fantano had mentioned it before and talked about how much she liked it. And you know, I've heard how groundbreaking she was, because that's something else I should mention. This is like, I would argue this stuff might be just as groundbreaking as the original, like the first Velvet Underground's record, for a completely different reason. I mean, the Velvet Underground, I mean, they primarily did art rock, which eventually led to punk music. What she was doing with this sound is eventually what led to post-punk and goth music and, you know, all that stuff. You know, you can definitely see, you know, I don't know for sure, but you can definitely see how, you know, bands like, you know, Joy Division or Susie and the Banshees might have drawn from this. So you know, all that, and again, plus I just wasn't in the best, you know, this has just kind of been depressing, this whole thing. Yeah. So and that's kind of like how I like to listen to music sometimes. I just want it to match my mood, and so all that kind of led me to really just finally diving into her solo stuff. And it's so weird because I don't know, I outside maybe like the first two albums, I don't know much of the Velvet Underground, and I don't really know much of Lou Reed's solo stuff either. Yet somehow I have now become like, this is one of my just musical obsessions right now. So I actually wasn't sure how you're going to think about this, Michael. I wasn't sure. I either thought you would really like this or be just completely bored and just like not understanding this at all. But I'm really glad you liked it. Ben, I was even less sure about you though, how you feel about this. So I want to hear what you have to say.
I found this stuff hard to listen to, not because I didn't like it, but because I really I'm going to go back after this episode and sit down and be like, okay, Marble Index, bring it to me, because I'm there with Michael. Like I listen to a lot of music and I go really far out on a lot of stuff, and it's hard for me to find something that like can break me out of my shell or break my brain. And this was, you know, I was hearing like, okay, so I hear a classical influence. I hear like a little bit of English folk, especially on the Marble Index, but it's mostly like, you know, drawing from that European classical and just turning it on his head. And it's
very medieval sounding at times.
Yeah, medieval. That's in my notes right here. Is there's a medieval element to it, like very old English folk. And there's one of the members of the Velvet Underground, John Cale, is the guy that produced her first three legitimate solo albums. Mm-hmm. His influence looms pretty large on these. So does Jim Morrison's lyrically, I think. She was doing a lot of like trips out into the desert with Jim at this time, where they'd go and get high on a multitude of things. And that's kind of how, that was a part of her writing process for this. Yeah. My if I had an issue, which I really don't know because I haven't listened to all these records, was it was getting a little samey for me. Like going through all this, it really feels like one big piece.
Yeah. And then that might have just been me, like it just because again, I can, like I said, for listeners at home, I kind of gave them a sample of what to listen to. So I kind of pick in this and like this kind of like the stuff you just heard with the Falconer. That's the kind of stuff that I was really drawn to. So that might have been my fault. I apologize, Ben. But
no.
I'm really glad you like this. Just a couple more things. You mentioned Jim Morrison. Actually, the third album, The End, that one might sound familiar to a lot of music fans, because of course that's the name of a very famous Doors song. And that album came out in 1974. It featured the two guitarists from Roxy Music, Brian Eno, and I forget the other guy's name, but that was inspired. Like obviously 1974, that wasn't too far away from Jim Morrison's death. I probably was very affected by it. And so, she not only named the album after that, but she performed a cover of cover version of that song on here. And to be quite honest, and this is going to shock a lot of people, I think I like Nico's version's better. I think it's not as long and drawn out as the original Doors version is. I think it provides a lot more atmosphere. And again, her voice is just has so much presence there. So I really recommend everyone go checking out that album. She also had a weird death. She died like in a cycling accident in like the late 80s. Yeah. I think she was in Spain. I think she was going out, like, I don't know where she was in Spain, but she was going to like riding her bike into town, I think, to get some weed or something. And she got like hit by a car. She's a way to go. Also, I should point out, this is definitely an artist where you have to practice separating the artist from the music, because she was also, from many accounts, a hella racist. She was people use the term Nazi-esque with her. Like she was a blonde, born shortly after World War II ended in Germany. I'm not going to say that had anything to do with it, but when people say she had Aryan tendencies at times, well, you can kind of, not harsh, you extrapolate. So as I say that as transparency, so you know what you're going into. She was not a good person from many accounts. Just listen to the music. The music is just fantastic, and that's pretty much all I have to say about her. I think. Do you have anything else you want to say about Nico?
That was it for me. Thank you for that disclaimer to put in there, because it is a good exercise to separate the art from the artist, and it's always a muscle you want to practice. But otherwise, great music.
Like you listening to the Smiths, Michael.
Oh yes, yeah, that'll be brought up.
You know what? It was just weird because when I got back to campus, the first thing I did was I handed these guys some like records that I didn't want, and I found like this old Smiths album that I just didn't. I mean, I'm not Mr. Whatever. I kind of shit on them, but I'm really whatever on them. I don't really care about them. But I was kind of just lightly making fun of Michael for liking Smiths because, well, Morrissey's a racist dick, but. Then I remembered, oh yeah, I like Nico now, so I really can't say anything about it. So, Jesus. All right, let's just move on from this. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Yes, I'm glad you do like Nico. But now we have to talk about another artist that Ben introduced us to. It's really cool. Ben, talk about Ted Hawkins.
All right, moving on. Ted Hawkins, I'll give you a little bio. So, this album that I introduced you guys to is his debut album, although it was released when he was, I think, in his late 30s, early 40s, if I'm doing the math right. It was recorded in the early 70s, but it wasn't released until 1982 by Rounder Records when he was in jail. Ted Hawkins, he grew up in Mississippi, or at least was born in Mississippi, and then he was a street performer in Venice Beach, California, for most of his life. That was his stage, was Venice Beach. And this is his first album, Watch Your Step. The album cover picture is taken the year it was released. That's him in the yard of the penitentiary he was in. There's some full band numbers on here, but it's all, I think, all written by Ted Hawkins, primarily solo acoustic soul music, which is a trip to hear if you haven't considered that before. But Ted plays the acoustic guitar on all of it. He's amazing with the big band, and that's the song I'm going to play you is one of the big band numbers. This is Who Got My Natural Comb, probably the silliest song on the record, I'd say. And then we'll kind of get your guys' impressions on it, because I really want to hear what you thought of this.
Wait, hold it. Stop the music. Stop this music. Who got my natural comb? 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 Who got it? Who got it? Who got it? Go get it! Who got my natural comb? Who got my natural comb? I ain't got no comb to comb my head. Hey, now. Nobody seem to hear the word I've said. Hey, now. You know what I'm talking about? Don't you make me turn this party off. That's what I got to do. Who got my natural comb? Who got my natural comb? If I don't find that strong comb, ain't nobody going home.
What do you think?
That intro is amazing.
Yeah. And I got to compliment your ability to turn off the song just as you need to when he left you on that note. But yeah, this song was my favorite on the record by far. And I suggested you play this one because of the big band horns and the false stop and everything. I mean, it brings so much personality to Ted Hawkins and this entire record. And I mean, that's kind of the, the different one you're going to find in this, because a lot of these songs are really heartfelt. And, like Ben was saying, the acoustic soul. I mean, if singers like Ted Hawkins or, Andrew even brought it up, this has a lot of Screamin' Jay Hawkins vibes. If those people like that don't get you moving, like, I don't know what's wrong with your soul, but like listening to this entire album, like doing chores in my kitchen was just like, it made the entire endeavor really fun. Just because like this guy has got vocal cords on him. He is screaming all over this whole thing, and it's just a pleasure to listen to, honestly. And instrumentals are great too, some good guitar playing, but I mean, I haven't listened to a record with this much personality on it in a very long time.
Yeah, I quite like this as well. And you played a great example of the big band stuff, and I think the big band stuff is really, really interesting. But I'm actually a little more interested about the just the stripped down acoustic stuff. I know a lot of people know I when done right and not boring, and this was certainly not boring, I'm really gravitated toward that stuff. And I think what really drew to me this is just this wonderful blend of soul, blues, and folk music. I think that's primarily what I'm hearing. There's maybe a dash of country here and there, but I'm drawn, the same reason why I'm kind of drawn to like the early work of the Jay Giles bands, because they also combine a lot of those sounds together, maybe with a bit of a bayou tone to it as well. I really like it when bands kind of combine those sounds, and the fact he was able to do that so expertly with just an acoustic guitar, I think says a lot to his musical talents. Lyrics were the only thing I was kind of down on. I mean, they did get a little awkward at times. I don't know what he meant by some of them. I don't want to say straight up sexist lyrics. I don't know what he meant by them, but I was inching a little towards that, but that wasn't really most of the record. I thought this was just had so much, like Michael said, personality, so emotion. I think this guy felt so earnest and genuine, and just between the doing the little research that I did and the bio that Ben gave at the start, I think it makes this guy all the more interesting. And surprised there isn't a biopic about his life yet. So someone should get on that.
To that point, two things on Ted Hawkins. First of all, his widow, rest in peace, Ted Hawkins, sold the movie rights to his life. So there may one day be a biopic on Ted Hawkins. And what I really want to hammer home with Ted Hawkins that you probably got from that, and that you'll get from basically every song on this record, is there are a handful of artists I can think of. Probably Screamin' Jay Hawkins is a good example. Ted Hawkins. I think Jonathan Richman is a really good example too, especially in like his earlier power poppy kind of stuff. there are some artists that sing like they're so happy or so moved by the music that they can't stay on microphone. And Ted Hawkins is like that. Ted Hawkins sings like his head is going to explode if he doesn't. Like he just has to get it out. And he has so much power behind his voice, even on the acoustic numbers. And it is really like I think my 3 records for me are all very like moving emotionally and have been since I found them. But this one is just, the love songs are sweet as saccharin and beautiful. The energetic songs are over the top and so full of energy. I really think that if you're a person who likes music in general, I think you can find something here that you're going to like.
I think it's Michael's turn again.
We're back to Michael.
Back around. I mentioned this next pick in an episode from last season. I may have put it as a recommendation. I don't really remember. I definitely mentioned it in passing, but this summer I got into the Flaming Lips just more and more and more. And they've always kind of been there for me. My dad is a huge fan. Their song, She Don't Use Jelly, was on my first MP3 player. But it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't until this summer where I really dived in. And these guys have been around forever. The debut, Here It Is, came out in 86. And they were kind of lumped into that late 80s college rock alternative scene. But they always were too weird to be lumped into like one subgenre or section. They were on Restless Records until the 90s, where they actually got into Warner. Apparently, the studio executives kept asking them to make an accessible record. Ben told me this. And then they just got weirder and weirder and weirder over time. No, it wasn't you. It was my roommate Brody who told me this.
Yeah.
And almost everything I've heard is terrific. I've heard all the classics by this point. I listened to the Soft Bulletin and, of course, the debut. But the one I wanted to bring on the show was, of course, Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots. That's their classic. That's their magnum opus. And, Ben's going to play you the title track of that, the first part of a 2-part song. And you're going to see the production quirks. You're going to see this beautiful acoustic, and you're going to get some awesome lead vocals as well.
Those evil nature robots, they're programmed to destroy us. She's gotta be strong to fight them, so she's taking lots of vitamins, 'cause she knows that it'd be tragic if those evil robots win. I know she can beat them. Oh, Yoshimi, they don't believe it, but you won't let those robots.
I apologize, Ben. I think I was actually going to have you play Do You Realize, but I mean, this song is just as great. You should listen to that one as well. Do You Realize? That's later in the album. But these guys are just wonderfully weird. They've collaborated with so many weird names. Miley Cyrus and Kesha are a couple examples.
Forgot about that.
Yeah. And,
Didn't they cover Sgt. Pepper's the whole album with Miley Cyrus? Wasn't that the collaboration?
No, it was Miley Cyrus and Her Dead Pets was the album name. I don't know if that was another thing.
Oh, they've done that too.
Yeah, they did?
Yeah, with a bunch of different artists. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's pretty interesting. But yeah, I love these guys, and I've been I fell into the rabbit hole over the summer, and I just love how the production is iconic. Mark Coyne's vocals are incredible, and the guitar work is just fantastic. Like simple chords, very simple chords. I mean, these are songs you can teach yourself in a half hour, but the way they work it into the song is just always blows me away. And Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots, like I said, is the magnum opus album, but I would recommend going and listening to the Soft Bulletin and any of their classics that came out in the late 80s and early 90s, along with all the great other bands that we've mentioned on this show before. But let's start with Ben, because I showed you guys these guys to you before, but what did you think now listening to the whole album? And then we'll go to Andrew.
I have a little familiarity with the Flaming Lips. Like I'm more familiar with a handful of the early stuff, but this is where I'd heard of this album. I'd heard it was good, but I hadn't gotten into it. Yeah, this guy's voice is top notch. I love his voice. I really love the songwriting. Like they have the weird edge, but they're putting it towards a concept album, which concept albums are kind of what got me into music. Like The Who's Quadrophenia was one of my first favorite albums, stuff like that. Something I did want to mention, sort of usual unsung heroes of albums. I wanted to talk about the rhythm section on this album, because you're getting bass, but you're getting lots of like keyboard bass, like lots of synth bass, and the drum sounds. I guess I don't know if it was programmed drums or real drums or programmed bass or real bass, but the drums and bass on this album are awesome. Like the rhythm sections, I was getting kind of a Beck vibe, like from some of Beck's more bleep bloop electronic-y stuff. There's the sort of a funkiness to it. There's kind of a cinematic nature to this album too, which I was really surprised by. Like I hadn't had a concept album really paint a picture for me in a long time. This one does. But yeah, it's fantastic. And there are songs in here that really work in the context of the album. There are songs in here that you can pull out and just listen to. It's kind of the perfect storm for when it comes to a concept album. And it got me even more interested in the Flaming Lips than I already was. So.
Sure. I want to make a quick correction. It's not Mark Coyne that did that. It's his brother Wayne, who kind of
I was going to say that
the band. Sorry about that, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. I will say I know even less about the Flaming Lips than Ben does. I mean, I really, apart from maybe like listening to a clip or two, I really kind of avoided these guys for no real reason. I remember hearing some like, I swear when I was first getting into music, I remember like people making fun of them. Maybe it was because of the whole Miley Cyrus stuff, and I felt like I just kind of wanted to avoid them. Maybe that was probably a mistake. It was definitely a mistake on my part. Outside of that, I mean, yeah, I really didn't know much of the music. I know that they played here a couple times, actually, in Mount Pleasant before. We have a local venue here called Rubbles, and it used to be called Tom's Foolery. And they brought a bunch of bands like Black Flag and Soul Asylum and the Dead Milkmen and whatnot. Just a lot of pretty notable names from like 80s punk and alternative college rock and whatnot. Flaming Lips as well. I don't know. They played at least 2 shows, maybe even 3. I don't remember. But they did like whole like light shows. Like I've seen like photos. There's a bunch of like just washed out photos, and they look really cool. It's been interesting to see these guys back in the day, and just such a small, because that was a very small crowd at bar. That would have been interesting. But yeah, I think one of the big reasons that I kind of avoided them for so long, because they have one of those catalogs, I like to say, and those catalogs meaning, oh my God, they've been around forever. They put out like 1,000 albums. I don't know where to begin, especially with this band, since I know they've changed their sound a ton of times. So, but I got to say, I really did like this one. I really wish I kind of paid attention to the concept of this more. I wasn't too familiar. Again, I wasn't familiar with this, so I didn't know there was a concept behind this. But yeah, the song we just played was great. I think in the summertime, it's summertime. In the summertime's not a good song, but It's Summertime is a good song. And I really enjoyed. I think Ben said it best when he said it sounded cinematic. I think that's a great way of putting it. Loved the production on this. I think everything just I don't know. Again, I don't have much to say on it because again, I really didn't. I don't know much of the concept, but this is a really strong pick, Michael. And if you could help me, or either you I don't know. Yeah, I'd like to explore these guys further. I just don't know where to go because I know that again they've just changed sounds so many times.
All right. Well, I would be happy to. I'm glad you guys found this one notable for sure. I mean, anything that sounds like when you put like a rock band in Neo Tokyo, I mean, I don't know. I wanted that concept to be in every music or all the music I listen to. So anyway, we'll just keep trucking forward if we want to go to our next pick.
Yeah, so these next guys are definitely a discovery. Like, remind one, like the Shorling, those two. Again, not to say that it wasn't necessarily the purpose of this episode was to show like tiny, really small artists. But yeah, this one definitely is a discovery and a small artist. They have 84 monthly listeners on Spotify currently, and all their songs have less than 1,000 a month. except for I think one. Yeah. And it'd be great if you can increase that, because this band called the Batshitcrazies, all one word. I don't like those band names where they just, I don't like those band names where they just make it all like one word. It's like, is your space bar broken? What is the point? Whatever. That's a small gripe, because I think this band's really, really fun. It's just fun. Like I love this band. I don't remember how I came across them. I think my girl, I think I was searching for like a band called like the Bats or something. I think probably because my girlfriend loves bats, like the animal. So I was finding a bunch of fans with the word bat in it. I came across these two. They're a female duo over in Israel. I don't think we've really touched on very much, and that's about as much as I know, because all like their social media is in Hebrew, I think. So I don't have much more to say as far as background, but all I do know is that their first album, I think it looks like their first full-length record, at least the one that's on Spotify, came out last year. It's self-titled. There's 11 tracks, but it's only like 18 minutes, because like all these songs are really short. This album is just a blast. I can't emphasize this enough. There's this great snarky attitude throughout the whole thing, even though I don't know what they're saying half the time, because again, it's in Hebrew. But they just have just this really spunky attitude, and I would highly just recommend listening to them. They're great. I'm going to play a song for you. I believe it's called Haiti Meta. It's probably said that wrong. I apologize for anyone who speaks Hebrew. But yes, I'd love Ben to play a clip for it. You'll see what I mean. Yeah, a little punky, a little indie, all fun. I'm going to stop saying the word fun. You guys start talking. I don't want to talk anymore.
I would agree with you, though, man. This entire album was a blast. I mean, and this is one of those bands where I'd love to know the backstory on, because I bet it's super interesting how a couple of girls came together and started making music like this that's noisy, but, has some melody to it as well. And like you said, you can tell they were having a great time putting this together. I love the Mean Girls reference in here with Glenn Coco. But
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, man, that's a Mean Girls reference.
Oh, great.
And that song was one of my favorites too. And the one you played as well. Friend Trend was also good. That one really trudged along, which I found some solace in that. But yeah, I fell in love with this right away. I mean, it's different than anything you brought before, because I see the name Batshitcrazies and I'm like, oh, okay, it's another punk band. All these picks were good, but like I thought it was like, okay, like maybe it'll sound something like Andrew's put together before, but no, this kind of like stood out right away, and it was kind of like, oh, there's something different about this. And I don't want to point to maybe it's their place of origin or something like that, but I mean, they're putting something together here that I've never heard before, at least from a punk genre umbrella. So I really appreciate that.
Well, hopefully we'll be hearing more from them moving forward.
Anything else out, or just this album?
I don't know. I think I've seen heard like a couple other things like other songs on their Facebook page. Like they're on Bandcamp. You can find them. I didn't see anything else on Bandcamp. You might be able to find a couple other things from Facebook. Again, I had to look through Google Translate, so I don't know how much of this is accurate. I think they might have said they have some new stuff coming out. In recent posts. I don't know for sure, because again, it's Google Translate. But yeah, I wish I had more. I really did. I really wish I had more info on these two, but I don't. I just don't, because again, I mean, they're pretty small or from another part of the world. So I just don't have the info. But yes, I'm sure I will put some recommendations in if they ever come out with new stuff in future episodes. But that's all I have to say about this band.
So I am going to continue two trends that Michael has set up for this episode. with his first two artists. The first being a solo artist working under an assumed name that sounds like a band name, and the second being bringing up an artist that we've brought up before on a previous episode. I've talked about David Berman's final project, Purple Mountains, before on here. I recommended one of the singles from this album. I'm going to talk about it again. And Purple Mountains, much like Weatherday, is just the name for a man, not a band. So Purple Mountains is a self-titled album that came out last year. It's the final album by David Berman, who before this went by the pseudonym Silver Jews, as that was sort of like a turnstile of band members, kind of just whoever of his friends he wanted to record with, and him. He was the mainstay. He was the mainstay of this as well. This could have been a project like that. We will never know. This is a pretty mid-tempo album. It's a pretty dark album as well. It focuses on David Berman lost his mother. There's a song about that. There's his struggles with depression. His crumbling marital relationship is a very big part of this album. This album, well, there's some more with it, but I think I'll get into it. This is one of the other singles from the album, I think, maybe, or this might be an album cut, but this is a song called Storyline Fever.
On occasion, we all do battle with motivational paralysis, unable to perform some simple task, trapped at the stage of analysis. Thoughts of the shortness of life may beget, bouts of shortness of breath in your chest, doubts about the worth of a night you got left, crowding out all but fear and regret. You got storyline fever, storyline flu, it's filtering how everything looks to you. Don't you reckon it's affecting your attitude? Storyline fever got its hooks in you. Storyline fever got its hooks in you.
So I do have a little more backstory on that album. Not to bring things down, but I think I'm gonna. This album, when David Berman made this album, he had been retired from music for 10 years. Allegedly, according to what I've read, he's said so himself that at this point in his life, he had like $100,000 in debt, credit card debt and other debt. So allegedly, this is a reason why he got back into music, was in hopes of stymieing that. This came out in July of 2019. So like a little over a year ago now, to near perfect reviews. And like a little over a year ago now, about 5 weeks after that album came out, David Berman was found, he had hanged himself in his New York apartment. So this is the last we will ever hear from David Berman. What did you guys think of it?
Yeah.
Well, after that jolly little story about suicide, I have this was actually excellent. I really enjoyed this. I don't know why I was maybe it was a little trivial to think of it, but I was getting reminded of the band Bright Eyes quite a bit on this album. Mainly through like the shakiness of his voice. It reminded me a lot of their vocalists. It's definitely, but definitely focused a little more on the folkier side of things rather than. Bright Eyes already has quite a bit of folk in their influences, but a little folkier than what they are, a little more subdued than what they are. And I know especially with that backstory about like the state he was in, I think it definitely adds a lot to the lyrics and whatnot on this record. Storyline Fever is probably, also probably a highlight for me. I think that I love the licks on that. This was great, and obviously, and it's fortunate, the backstory behind that as well, and what happened shortly after. So, because of that, I don't really know what else to say. I don't know what else I want to say, but no, I'm happy you introduced this to me, Ben. I think this was really strong.
Yeah, I can pretty much emulate everything you just said, but also add that Silver Jews is one of those bands that I dabble in. I by no means am a fan yet, or can consider myself a fan yet, mostly because I have to be in a certain mood to kind of endure a lot of those mid-tempo songs and more just appreciate that lyricism that's at the forefront. I look at David Burnham as a poet before a musician, always have, and Purple Mountains challenged that for me, because I think on this one I got a lot of colorful instrumentation that I wouldn't get normally on a Silverjuice record. And for me, the highlight was Margaritas at the Mall, because it was it kind of stood out as this like kind of golden, you can take it as a cheery song with some horns in the background and stuff like that. But Storyline Fever, I mean, you got to appreciate that guitar lick in there. That's just so catchy. And you'll find that on a lot of his music as well. But this opened my mind even more to listening to more of David Burnham's music, and you can expect me going back and listening to this album again, as well as everything that Silverjuice put out, because now I feel like I got to fully commit to it after hearing, the Black Star of this man's career.
Yeah, that is what I was going to say. Is I like there's a big part of me that really values sort of final statements from artists, whether they knew they were going to be their final statement or not. Black Star is a very good example of that. But I think that, if you think of, I put Purple Mountains in a class with an album like Black Star and an album like Pink Moon. Yeah. Like, to me, this felt like Pink Moon. You're getting that inside portrait that this isn't as stark as Pink Moon, but you're getting sort of that look into someone's head who is not doing okay. And I think that a lot of these songs are really moving for that reason. I didn't have the backstory when I first got into it. I think the backstory sort of heightens them, but yeah, this is a stellar album. It came out to almost perfect reviews, deserved. And yeah, if there's I miss David Berman. I'll just say that,
Thank you for showing me this. I definitely found some merit in it. I'm going to get back into it.
Michael, do you think you can help us uplift us perhaps out of this sadness with this next pick of yours? The final pick of yours, actually. I think these are all our final picks.
This is the final round, and I'm really excited to talk about this one because, as I said earlier, this is a movie soundtrack, and I realized that this is one of my favorite movies of all time, man. And you both were at, our friend Teresa's place when Ben and I were watching this attentively, and Andrew was in the other room. But The Secret Life of Walter Mitty is a very underrated Ben Stiller directed and starred movie. It's about a man who works for Life magazine, who's never really gone out in the world and lived up to life's old motto, which was all about adventure and getting out and experiencing new things. And it follows the story of Ben Stiller trying to find a photo negative from a famous photographer in this world who is just the prime example of getting out there and having adventures and experiencing life for all it is. And I strongly recommend the movie. But the soundtrack is what really made it stand out for me. You're going to find a collection of some great indie folk pieces, a lot of acoustic stuff that just gives you kind of pumped and gets you really reflective in a sort of looking at what's forward kind of mood. Particularly, there's a scene where Ben Stiller is in Greenland, or is it Iceland? And he's longboarding down this giant mountain to get to this small town, and it's like his first adventure out, and you can see the joy on his face, and it's just like a perfect moment captured in this movie. And you have this song playing in the background. It's called Far Away by a group called Junip. Other than that one, you're going to find some great Jose Gonzalez tunes on here, who I got into a lot last year. Great indie folk singer. He does a great cover of Number 9, Dream, by John Lennon. Amazing cover. Jack Johnson is on here. You can remember him from Curious George soundtrack, of course. Rogue Valley also has a couple tunes on here. One tune, and then you got Rogue Wave with another one. And then they also put David Bowie's Space Oddity at the forefront in this movie. They play it in a certain scene. It wasn't on the soundtrack, but if you watch the movie, you'll get the context of that song. Just another song about, getting out there and kind of throwing caution to the wind and experiencing new things. But Ben saw the movie, so I want him to talk first, and then Andrew can give his impressions just hearing the soundtrack.
Yes. All right. So before we knew each other, since I saw this movie when I was, I don't know, when it came out, probably pretty close to that, this has always been a movie near and dear to my heart. It hadn't been in my mind recently. I just hadn't really been thinking of it. But yeah, we watched this at Teresa's place. And I just remembered every race and while of this movie. It's very creative, and a very big reason is the soundtrack. This soundtrack that pulls together music from different places that all kind of sounds similar but not the same. There are lots of really big sounding songs on this, lots of really soaring vocals and soaring string parts and stuff like that. Lots of really big drums, like really big drums. And this music is adventurous. I think it's a great soundtrack for a road trip, which actually I had a road trip this summer, as I talked about, and there were probably 4 or 5 songs from the Walter Mitty soundtrack that were on our big playlist that we listened to. So this music is perfectly picked for sort of a globe trekking movie like Walter Mitty is, and it really it stands on its own, and use it in your life. I'll say, use it if you want a road trip, use it, because it works.
Well, I guess I'll speak in. I don't appreciate you, Michael, disparaging me, misrepresenting me, because I actually have seen this movie before.
Right, okay.
But it was a long time ago, so I can't really say much to it. I actually saw this movie when I was in class in 10th grade during my high school years time.
Was it a film and literature class?
No, it was actually it was literature. It wasn't film, but it was literature, because I'm not sure if you know this story is that this movie, I'm going kind of based off memory and some brief Wikipedia research, is actually based off of a short story written in the 40s, 30s.
Yes.
It's I think it's of the same name. It's basically about a guy who is like, when his wife's going into like the store, she's going in getting something, and he's just kind of sitting in the car, or he's waiting for stuff, and he sees these just like, just sitting there mundane, having just mundane, and he sees like things in like the real world, like kind of inspire him to to these crazy adventures in his head, like he's he's I don't know, like having a gunfight in war, or being an EMT or something like that, or he's a surgeon. I think that was one of the ones. And obviously that's not really how this movie followed, or I believe the one that was made. I think there was a movie made like late 40s based off that original short story, and I don't think either one of them really followed it. I remember like thinking like the original, like with the original movie, I'm like, that sounds so dumb. Like I think it did generally like sound like it was still like all these adventures were still happening in his imagination. Like that sounds dumb to me. Like, why would you want to watch a movie where you guys just imagining things? But I was actually pleasantly surprised when I did watch the movie back in 10th grade, like the most recent one with Ben Stiller, that it didn't really follow that, and it was more of a breaking out of your shell kind of movie, and I thought that was actually a natural progression for these days and age. I remember not being particularly impressed by the movie. Granted, I saw it forever ago, and I was watching it in class, so that probably had an effect on my opinion of it. So I probably do need to rewatch this. It sounds like, especially since you two are giving it such high praise. The soundtrack, though, it's pretty interesting. Like I said, it does have a lot of variety. It does have some really interesting stuff in there. I'm glad you played that song from Junip, Michael, because I think that's really strong. I love how like the mix of that with really thick, heavy bass with those like jangly like guitars over it, gave it like a really interesting drive. And I think that's that. From what I remember the movie, I think that's definitely a kind of song I think should fit in there. It should kind of help convey the adventures. I wasn't a fan of everything on here. I mean, some of this stuff sounded like indie music that was written for commercials to me, particularly the Jose Gonzalez stuff. That was just me. I was also not happy that there was a goddamn version of that stupid Pina Colada song. If there's any song I hate more than Kokomo for being too tropical, it's fucking Pina Colada song. I don't care who's singing it. I mean, I don't care if it's Jack Johnson. I don't care if it's Bad Religion. No band can make that song good. I hate it. I hate it so much. But no, Space Odyssey is of course a classic, and and there is some, I think, strong stuff, and I think it does, for the most part, I think convey what that movie was trying to tell. I think telling a story of adventure, telling a story of breaking free from one's like insecurities, one's like just I guess hermitness, I suppose. I don't know. That's kind of like a characteristic I got from Ben Stiller in that movie. So no, I mean, this is for movie soundtracks. I think this is pretty strong.
Let's keep it going. Last round.
God, I guess I'm still going here with this one. So I'll probably need your little help. Maybe I'll need your help a little bit on this, Ben, for the bio. But we're gonna talk about some more soul music, and like Ted Hawkins, who kind of combines a lot of songs with soul. This is 100% true soul music by an artist named, who goes under the pseudonym Swamp Dogg. I don't remember his actual name.
The original D-O-double-G.
Yeah, because that's how it's spelled. Yeah, like he's from I think his music career started at the very beginning of the 70s. At least, no. He was recording stuff before, but as Swamp Dogg.
Yes.
He was, I kind of started the very start of the 70s. I'd actually known the name Swamp Dogg and knew of his stuff. Well, not his music, but particularly his album covers. I'll say why in a second. For a long while. And the reason I had heard of him, and I'm salty about this now, is because he is why I think, especially the album that I had you guys listen to called Rat On, he is widely regarded to have some of the absolute worst album covers of all time. Just look up Swamp Dogg album covers. They're just the worst. Particularly with Rat On, features him wearing a fringed leather vest, wearing what I can only be described as a shirt made out of like a psychedelic zebra skin, and he's riding a giant albino rat. It's horrid. And I'm like, okay. And for the longest time, because of that, I thought, oh, this guy is just some gimmick artist, whatever. There's no reason to look into his music. Then I heard, he had released an album this year. I forget, what's it? Remind me of the name.
Sorry you couldn't make it.
Thank you, Ben. See, this is helpful. And then I kind of learned more about the backstory of this guy, because one of the reviewers who I watched on YouTube, who originally made fun of his album artwork so many times, he said, "Oh yeah, this guy's legit though." I'm like, hold on, what are you saying? This guy has actually been around, like I said, since like the early 70s. He's made God knows how many records at this point, and he is legit. He can sing. Oh my God, he's one of the best voices I've heard in a long time. And he while he makes a lot of these weird like love songs and kind of these weird like off kilter lyric stuff, he also has a lot of like heartfelt songs as well, whether it be about love or politics, especially with race relations. You definitely got a lot of this on the album Rat On. I remember, so I was, for my birthday, my mom just gave me a bunch of money. Said, just go crazy at the record stores. And I went, made sure I wore gloves and masks and social distance and whatnot. But I was looking through there, and it's like, I just saw this album, Rat On, sitting there. I'm like, all right, I heard this guy's legit. Why not? Let's give this a shot. And I was just like, my mouth was on the floor when I was listening to this album. I was like, God damn it. For 4 or 5 years, however long I knew this guy, never gave him a second thought beyond the album covers. This is the ultimate. Do not judge the music by its album cover, because goddamn, I made that mistake with this man. And I'm just going to have Ben play the song, God Bless America, What For? And you'll know why.
for free? And can someone please explain this word called equality? 'Tis the time for everyone to come to this country's aid and help repair the mess of this land that we've all made. You see kids are tired growing up just to fight another war and singing, God bless America, unless they know what for. God bless America, unless they know what for. Somebody tell somebody.
So musically, that's one of his more subdued tracks on that album. But you can tell just how well he can sing. He's one of the most emotional singers I've ever heard. It's great. And songs like that and Do You Believe? And Remember I Said Tomorrow, they have a lot of discussions about race and politics, considering obviously that became really forefront more than ever, in such a long time, forefront of our national conversation. That really hit home for me, and even songs like Creeping Away and Gotta Get a Message to You, which is, I think about, which are just, kind of your standard love song. I won't say standard love songs, but just love songs. Even then, those just really hit home, it's just how much just gusto he puts into his stuff. And yeah, I feel robbed that I hadn't listened to this man's music for so long, because now I've fallen in love with Swamp Dogg. But I want to hear what you two have to say about Swamp Dogg now.
So I had some familiarity with Swamp Dogg, as you may have heard. If you know me, if you have kind of gotten a sense of me through what I've shown on this show, you might get the idea that Swamp Dogg is kind of right up my alley. Like, I like soul music, I like funk music, I like people who are willing to be silly, and he is all of these things and more. Just an atomic bomb of a voice Swamp Dogg has, and the willingness to do anything and the ability to do anything. I really wanted to bring up 2018 and 2020. Swamp Dogg put out albums, and in 2018 he put out an album called Love, Loss, and Auto-Tune, where he gets together with some producers, he brings some hip hop elements in with soul and funk, and he experiments with auto-tune in the craziest way you've ever heard, and like uses it as an instrument. Like I have become a guy who can respect auto-tune when it's used properly. This is auto-tune used, I don't even know if it's properly. He's pushing it to its absolute limit, and I really love it. And his most recent record, Sorry You Couldn't Make It, has some country flavor to it, which is really cool. And yeah, I mean, this record is great. I really don't know, like, I haven't gone album by album with Swamp Dogg yet, because there's a lot, but I really don't know if he has anything bad. I seriously don't know if he's capable of recording an entirely bad album.
My impressions when I heard that song you just played, Andrew, that is what fully sold it for me. Up to that point, you're getting amazing guitar tone, you're getting awesome licks and stuff, just great instrumentation, you're getting this guy's voice, and that's great. But then when you get to God Bless America for What, I mean, what a great song to discover in the world we're in right now. And coming off of an album where it's a guy riding a rat, I mean, it's just crazy to me where you can find this shit, because it's like, that message of like, you hear that phrase all the time, God bless America, but what should God be blessing America for? That's what he's asking in this song. Is it really God bless America, we're so great, or is it God bless America because we need a blessing, because we've committed some sins, and that's what I get from that song. And I think that hits super hard. And of course, you have other songs on this album in particular. For me, Remember I Said Tomorrow had probably the best instrumentation, especially guitar wise. That's what really did it for me. That's what clicked me in right away. But damn, man, if his, albums, like, I mean, Ben, you just said like this guy seems to like want to change his sound a lot. I'm interested in listening to whatever this guy puts out, because if it's as groundbreaking and awesome as this album, I know I'm gonna like it. So
Yeah, this was his, I believe, second studio record. Right on. I forgot what the first one is called. Forgetting all the research I did. If I remember correctly, there it is. It's called Total Destruction of Your Mind, which should say something. I think he was inspired by like LSD and like Frank Zappa's weirdness when he made that record. And yeah, he's just been pumping out records for just the longest time. You know, he didn't sell a lot of records from my understanding when he was first making music, which is a crime. Although then again, when you look at covers like Rat On, it kind of makes sense too. But you know, he's become just such a cult classic. And now, yeah, you know, again, the most recent record Ben had mentioned, the country flavorings there, and the stuff I've heard from that album is pretty good. So this definitely is a guy who has just a deep appreciation for music and trying new things, reinventing himself. I really can't recommend much more from there because I just don't really know where to go with him next. I'm kind of like running the same issues with the Flaming Lips, where I just like such a huge back catalog. He's done a lot of stuff. I don't know where to go next. So, and he's just a ton of stuff in Spotify too. So it'll probably take some more research on my part. But yes, at the very least, definitely check out the most recent Swamp Dogg record. From my vantage point, check out this album. Don't just ignore the album covers. By all God, please. And just focus on just man's wonderful talents. And I'm really happy to also saw that as well.
All right. You want to wrap it up? I got my last one.
Let's do it.
Okay, we have another connection here I must bring up. I mentioned that Swamp Dogg's most recent album is a country album. This guy I'm about to talk to you about is a country singer, which I feel like is rare for this show. And he was featured on 2 songs on Swamp Dogg's 2020 album, Sorry You Couldn't Make It. This is the favorite songwriter, or a favorite songwriter of people like Bob Dylan, Johnny Cash, Roger Waters, Casey Musgraves. This guy's a 3-time Grammy winner, although you might have never heard his name before, but you probably heard one of his songs. This is John Prine. He put his first album out in 1972. He put his last album out in 2018. A country music artist first and foremost, an amazing songwriter, probably even before that. This is from his 1978 album, sort of a stripped-down back-to-basics album called Bruised Orange. This song is called Sabu Visits the Twin Cities Alone, which I will explain right now. So the Elephant Boy, Sabu the Elephant Boy, it's a series of movies from the 40s about this Indian kid who, you know, he rode on an elephant, and he would kind of like, he had little adventures and stuff. This is a song about the actor that played that kid. I think this is part true, part fiction. The actor that played that kid going on like a publicity tour through the Midwest, through like Minnesota, Wisconsin, like the Midwest to the northern part of the Midwest. I think it's a touching song, and I'm just going to play you a little snippet of it.
The movie wasn't really doing so hot, said the new producer to the old big shot. It's down on the edge of the great Midwest. Sabu must tour or forever rest. Hey look, Ma, here comes the elephant boy, bundled all up in his corduroy, headed down south towards Illinois, from the jungles of East St. Paul. His manager sat in the office alone, staring at the numbers on the telephone, wondering how a man could send a child actor to visit in the land of the wind chill factory. Hey look, Ma, here comes the elephant boy.
I think that song can give you a little bit of an idea of what John Prine does. He can tug at your heartstrings with a melody. He can sing about something really silly and make it sound not silly, or make it sound really stupid. I picked this one because John Prine, disclaimer, I guess, or sad thing, again, died of COVID-19, I think in March or April. And that was the push I needed. Like I had known his first album, but I hadn't really appreciated him beyond that. We lost him, and I got heavily into him this summer. And I had no idea what you guys were going to think of this, but this is the big artist from my summer, so I had to bring him in, even though this isn't really a country show.
No, absolutely. And I respect the fact that you brought it here, Ben, because you talked about John Prine all throughout the summer. And then it was also like another road trip pick, right? That was on the playlist.
Yeah, he was all over.
Yeah. And this is someone you were recommending to us prior. But I never knew what the album was. Where do I start? And, you know, I got roped in right away, not from the songwriting, but actually from the guitar playing on Fish and Whistle. Just right away, it hooks you in with some just glorious finger picking guitar. You know, and not country in the traditional way that you would think of it, but a really like clean and soft and very pleasant sounding folk style guitar. And of course the lyric, his vocals stand out. And that's the thing with me with country is the reason why I can't get into it so heavily is for me, a country singer has to have a standout vocal performance. That's why people like Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson are so easy to get into, is because they have a whole personality in the timbre of their vocals. And I feel like that's the big step people have to get across if they want to get into country. And but John Prine did that for me. And it's probably one of the hardest things, you know, someone with my music taste can accept, because country is so far out of my wheelhouse. Besides like those big name guys. And then, you know, you have that style song, which I talked about. And then you get late into the album and you get Iron Ore Betty, which was just like, I don't know what hit me with that song, but it was just like, maybe it was the fact that it was louder. It was a little more abrasive, but like, it just kind of came out of nowhere and it blew me away. I don't know going forward if like I'm going to go out of my way and look into more John Prine albums. But if you were to send one to me, Ben, I would go out of my way and listen to it again, because it intrigued me for sure.
Yeah, and I actually don't really have much to add to that. I think Michael said pretty much kind of summed up my thoughts on this too. You know, and again, I'm not the biggest country guy, because I grew up listening to Johnny Cash, so I definitely have that with me, you know, but my parents listen to modern country, so yeah, a lot, and it just kills that genre. If you know if you've ever listened to the modern country charts, it will destroy like that genre's credibility to you just real quick. But you know, especially when you go back in time a bit, yeah, sure, in the 70s, you'll artists like Glenn Campbell, which no, but I rather enjoyed this. Again, if I'm going to listen to country, you know, like I like outlaw country. I like the atmosphere that genre brings, and I also like the folkier side of country. You know, like that, like especially when it's almost more folk than actual country. I think that stuff I can really get into. And you know, when the minute that he started singing, I mean, I was getting Dylan vibes. I mean, immediately, just because I don't know, the way his voice sounded, like, oh, this is Dylan. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because it was Dylan. Definitely with some more country influences, kind of reminded me of some of his more country records. And Michael brought up his guitar playing. I think that's excellent. I mean, Dylan, he's a great artist. I don't know if he's really renowned for his guitar playing abilities. And not that he really needed to, especially early on in his career. I mean, he was just making simple folk music, and I don't mean that as a drag. It's just that was his thing, and that was part of his appeal. But I feel like this is almost sounds like Dylan's sound, but expanded upon. This is like, like he was able to bring like something, because so many artists, you know, especially when you hear like those kind of like nasally, you know, like vocals over like folk guitars, like, oh God, it's another Dylan clone. But no, I don't get that with John Prine. I definitely I definitely think that he was able to really expand on his sound. Songs with Sabu, visits the Twin Cities alone. I really like the title track from this record, and I'm glad you brought up Iron Ore Betty.
Mhm.
Why can't I say that? But Michael, that song, I'm glad you brought that up because I also really enjoyed that as well. I think this was pretty interesting. Again, I'm kind of with Michael. I don't know how much I'm going to explore moving forward, but again, if you have any recommendations where to move forward with this, Ben, especially with some of this more stripped down material, again, I'm kind of drawn to that stuff. I would listen to it if I were to find this in a record store. This album, it was for a good price. I'd buy it. I think this was pretty good. So I'm glad you finally gave me a taste of John Prine, because again, I really only knew him by name only before listening to this record.
I think I will do just a little bit of a recommendation, just so I think people need to get into John Prine, especially now that he's gone. He's a great artist, but I think 1991 he put out an album, double LP, called John Prine Live, and it's a collection of live recordings from his career up to that point. I think all from one night, but it's just him and an electric guitar. I think he's finger picking, or it's a plugged in acoustic. Telling stories about almost every song, playing a collection of songs from his entire career. And he was a live experience, just an amazing storyteller, one of those artists whose ability as a storyteller would rival their ability as a musician. So if you want to try and get a little deeper into John Prine or really get an impression of who he was, you should listen to that John Prine Live album. If you were
To compare the album that you gave us to any Dylan record, what would it be?
Off the very top of my head, probably, the country stuff is more similar, so maybe something like New Morning, but if you're thinking of something stripped down, I'd probably say Blood on the Tracks. Not tonally, but the way that the music sounds, I'd say that there might be a similarity there.
I'm continuing to get into Bob Dylan slowly but surely. That episode is coming
someday.
Yeah, we got to do that as well. I would love, if you figure out a way to actually make that, not make it 12 hours long. Yes, I would love to do a Dylan episode.
If we find some way to make it really interesting, like the Beatles debate, which will someday come, but.
Well, I think that's about it. I think that's about everyone. We're not going to do recommendations this week because I think a lot of these were stuff we would have put as recommendations. Although then again, I got into a lot of stuff. I really didn't talk about how much post-punk I've been listening to this summer. So you'll probably be hearing that moving forward with my personal recommendations. Hell, maybe we'll do a post-punk episode. I don't know. We have ideas. We just don't have a schedule yet as far as things out. So, but I think we kind of settled on the idea of possibly doing, since we have a little bit of gap when this is recorded and when this next episode will be released, we might do a mini episode as well as an episode about the Silver Sun pickups, which you promised me, Michael, last
that's happening
last semester. So I think you can probably expect that from us next year on Soundcheck. But real quick before we move off though, Ben, what are these? Because I'm sitting in his office right now and I'm seeing these high glossy res printouts of our last week's thumbnails. I forgot how good this is. This is probably the best one. Probably the best one.
Okay, for the listener, the watcher is seeing it on Andrew's screen. At least some of it. Zoom is automatically cutting, so some of them they're not getting. But for the listener, I've printed out 5 of our best album artworks, and I'm going to hang them in the newly minted podcast studio to someday grace us when we can finally record in a studio again. So just know that those will be somewhere in the studio eventually when we're recording in a studio again. That's a little behind the scenes for you.
For sure. I'm excited for this season, boys. I think it's going to
be. Me too. Also, can I say this picture still trips me the fuck out? How well
it looks so similar.
She looks it fits. I'm showing right now for the listeners. I'm showing the thumbnail for the Mac DeMarco episode where we photoshopped Michael's face onto the Salad Days album, and it looks so simple. It's a seamless fit. It almost doesn't look like a Photoshop. I mean, Jesus Christ.
That one was just pure luck. That one just worked so well.
All right, guys. Well, hey, for anybody listening, Thank you. What do we usually say at the end of episodes?
It's been that long, you've forgotten our
I'm just
closing
joking.
close out.
I know what we say.
What do we say, boys?
Good
Good
night.
night, Detroit.
Almost had it that time. Damn it.
Michael, you gotta dance. I'll edit this over the ending.
Please let me go.
Everyone make noise so it'll cut to you.
again.
Oh, life, can't you afford me another chance?
It's not working.
If you let me go round again.
It's not working for me.
Far more better plan.
Far more better
Cool.
plan.